All right, hello and welcome. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most spectacularly awful first dates I have ever heard of. Seriously, it's a story so packed with wrong terms and just plain bad luck that it somehow kind of loops all the way back around to being a success? It's wild. Let's get into it. You know the feeling. We've all been there, right? That little flutter of excitement mixed with a whole lot of anxiety before a first date. You've got the outfit planned, you've got a couple of funny stories in your back pocket, but there's always that tiny voice in your head asking, what's the absolute worst that could happen here? Well, get ready, because our story today is going to answer that question in glorious, painful detail. And this is our hero, Max. This one sentence, probably mumbled into his phone right after it all went down, just sets the stage perfectly. He has just survived a truly catastrophic evening, and lucky for us, we get a front row seat.
So, what we're going to do is basically perform an autopsy on Max's night. We're going to break down this one date, piece by painful piece, because believe it or not, there are some genuinely surprising lessons buried in the wreckage about what actually matters when you're trying to connect with someone.
Because that's the real kicker here. This isn't just a funny story about a terrible night out. Nope. This is a case study in how everything completely falling apart can sometimes show who you really are. And maybe that's way more attractive than some perfectly planned, boring evening. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. This wasn't just one little mistake. Oh no, this was a domino effect, a full-on chain reaction of social awkwardness and terrible luck, where each new disaster just rolled right into the next one.
Here's a little roadmap of the carnage. It kicks off with a simple location mix-up, which then escalates into a minor medical issue, and for the grand finale, a social nightmare. Let's break down how this all unfolded.
Okay, mistake number one. The setup is simple. Max is supposed to meet his date at a place called Le Chic, but instead he confidently marches into Le Chic, a simple one-letter difference that immediately sent the whole evening into a nosedive. And the fallout from that is instant. By the time he figures out his mistake and literally sprints to the correct restaurant, he's a full 30 minutes late. So he shows up, totally flustered, sweaty, out of breath, while his date has just been sitting there patiently waiting. Not exactly a smooth start.
So he's already in recovery mode, right? And how does he try to fix it? By trying to look all cool and adventurous. He orders the chef's special, but he makes a rookie mistake. He doesn't actually ask what's in it. And this, my friends, leads us straight into disaster number 2.
And in Max's own words, you can just picture it. Turns out he's allergic to something in that exotic dish. His face starts puffing up. I mean, so much for trying to look sophisticated. His attempt to be worldly just backfired in the most visible, mortifying way imaginable. Just when you think poor Max is dealing with enough, he's late, his face looks like he just fought a swarm of bees and lost, the universe decides, you know what this date needs? A surprise guest. The final, perfect piece of this disaster puzzle. And it is truly the worst-case scenario. It's his ex-girlfriend at the very next table. And she doesn't just sit there. Oh no. She comes over to their table to ask him what's wrong with his face in front of his new date. The level of cringe is just, it's off the charts. You can't make this stuff up. At this point, the date is a total write-off, right? He was late, he's having an allergic reaction, and he's been publicly humiliated by his ex. You gotta think, okay, that's it. We've hit rock bottom. It cannot possibly get any worse. But oh, it can. And here it is, the grand finale, the simple, everyday moment that's about to become the humiliating cherry on top of this catastrophe Sunday. The bill for the meal that tried to take him out arrives at the table.
Boom. The final nail in the coffin. After everything, his card is declined. And his date, the woman who patiently waited for him, who watched his face swell up like a pufferfish, has to graciously pay for the entire disastrous meal. The end.
And yeah, that quote from Max really says it all, doesn't it? Just complete and utter emotional defeat. He has hit the lowest of lows. There is no way to salvage this. It is, by any objective measure, the worst first date in human history.
But then, just when you think the story's over and Max is just going to go home and wallow in his failure forever, something completely unexpected happens. The narrative takes this sharp, unbelievable turn. So Max's expectation was crystal clear. He would never hear from her again. He'd delete her number, she'd block his, and they would both try to pretend this night never, ever happened. But the reality? Well, it was something else entirely. He gets a text, and she doesn't just say, thanks for the experience. She actually calls the night interesting, which is maybe the understatement of the century, and she asks to see him again. Can you believe that? After all that chaos, she wasn't put off. She was intrigued.
So what in the world happened here, right? How did this absolute train wreck of a date somehow lead to a second one? This is where we get to pull out the real lessons from Max's hilarious misfortunes.
Okay, so on a practical level, here's what Max learned the hard way. 1. Double-check the name of the restaurant. 2. Probably ask what's in your food. 3. Always have a backup payment plan, maybe some cash. But number 4, that's the most important one. You have to keep your sense of humor, because that's what his date actually saw.
And this, right here, is the whole point. His date didn't see some perfect, impressive guy on a perfect, impressive date. She saw a real person get hit by one disaster after another, and she saw how he handled it. Sure, he was embarrassed, but he could also see how ridiculous it all was. He was authentic in his failure, and that turned out to be way more compelling than a flawless, boring night ever could be.
Which leaves us with just one last question. I want you to put yourself in his date's shoes for a second. You just witnessed this entire comedy of errors unfold right in front of you. It was memorable, to say the least. So be honest with yourself. After all of that, would you go on the second date? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.